Welcome back, students. I am your SST teacher Vandana Joshi and you are watching SST June. Students, today we are going to revise History Chapter 6, that is Weavers, Iron Smelters and the Factory Owners, in which we will study the condition of weavers in India and the decline of the cotton textile industry and again its raise up. We will also study the iron smelting industry, in which we will see the Tata iron and steel industry, and we will study about the factory owners in this chapter. So first, let's start our topic with the introduction of this chapter. When European arrived in our country during 17th century or early part of the 18th century, India was in its peak of the handicrafts and the other industries because the goods were cheap, handmade, long lasting, but these were expensive, but they were having their fine quality. In the 18th century, around 1850s, the industrial revolution in Europe that hit the Indian industries very hard. Since our goods were made by hand, very expensive, and these could not compete with the machine-made goods, which were cheaper. Thus, many industries in our country, they declined, and the craftsmen suffered at the hand of the new rulers. So here, first we will see the condition of the Indian handicrafts as the weavers and again its raise up in the different part of our country. During the first half of the 19th century, or even up by 1880, India's economy was a strange phenomenon. It was a time of deindustrialization in our country. Before the advent of British, India led the world in production of cotton textile. Indian textile was very good, fine quality and also very cheap. So it was very popular in the European country. But till the end of the 18th century, Indian textiles dominated the world market. It was not easy to stop their sale all of a sudden. The specialized craftsmen produced goods of utility and luxury for domestic and world market. The cotton textile production was carried on in Dhaka, Banaras, Krishnanagar, Lucknow, Agra, Multan, Surat, Ahmedabad and Madurai. Calico and muslin were the two famous types of textiles considered by people as important luxury item. After that, the invention of spinning jenny and a kind of revolution in the cotton textile weaving. The spinning and the weaving work much easier in the industries with the help of machines. So the work which was earlier done by the Indian weaver, it was time taking and also very costly. So it was denied by the local people as well as the other countries. With the political conquest of Bengal, the company gained a monopoly over the raw materials from Bengal. The British forced the Indian to give their product at the lowest possible price. They forced the weaver to accept the cheapest rate. Also, they monopolized the rate of raw cotton. As a result, the Bengal weavers had to pay very high price to buy raw cotton. Earlier, there were a large number of rulers and the nobles in India who patronized craftsmen. However, as the British gained control over more and more territories, the rulers and nobles receded from prominence. As such, the craftsmen could not more be given patronage, and it hastened their decline. The British imposed heavy duties and taxes on Indian goods, while the British goods were chiefly free from them. It made the Indian goods costlier, so they could not stand in comparison to the British goods. The Indian goods were levied heavy duties when exported to England, as the Indian artisans and the craftsmen were rendered jobless. They sought work with the British factories. They were employed on the basis of discriminatory rules. They were paid less and made to work more. Also, a craftsman once employed could not leave his job. If he did so, he was arrested and punished by the British government. In addition to this sentence, the British government imposed all kind of restriction on the development of Indian industry. Now India was made a country from where they could procure raw materials and where they could sell their finished good at a heavy profit. No attention was paid to the development of Indian industry and crafts, and therefore the Indian cotton textile industry and the handicraft industry was declined during that time. Student, once the textile industry was declined, so what were the effect of that decline and how again there was a growth of industry in the 20th century? Let's see. Due to decline of Indian textile industry, weavers and spinners lost their livelihood and became agricultural labor, thus putting more pressure on the already overburdened agriculture. Some migrated to cities to work in the new cotton mills of Bombay, Ahmedabad, Sholapur, Nagpur, Kanpur. Some of them went out of the country to work in plantation in Africa and South Africa. The establishment of modern industry in India began in the second half of 19th and early 20th century. But the growth was at a very slow rate, as the British never wanted India as industrially developed country because they were developing their own country. The major industries during the 19th century and first half of the 20th centuries were the iron and steel factory, wood steel, and the cotton and textile industry. Here might be you are thinking that this story is of the textile industry, so who are the weavers? So weavers, those were specialized in the work of weaving or preparing the clothes. They were known as the different names as Tati weavers of Bengal, Julahas or Momins in the North India, and Sail, Kekular and the Devangas of the South India. The weavers are having generally the work of spinning and preparing the clothes. They were generally using takli and charkha for spinning instrument, but later it was replaced by the spinning jenny. Apart from the weavers, the color textile, block printing, and dyed clothes were also used, which were done by the Rangraj. And chippigers are also there. Those were doing the block printing and the printing work of the clothes. Once decline of the textile industry, later again it came up in a running part of the textile in our country. So the first mill in India was set up as a spinning mill in Bombay in 1854. Later it was followed by a mill in Ahmedabad in 1861, Kanpur in the United Provinces in 1862. However, the mills did not get protective tariffs like other countries from foreign competition, as India was under colonial rule of British. But still some industrial revolution took place in the country. This industrial revolution we can also see in the iron smelting work, where it was a rising time of the iron and steel factories in India. Before the iron and steel factories in India, generally the melting work and the steel factories, we can say it was based on the wood steel. Indian steel and metallurgy reached a mark of excellence. This is evident when we see the quality of Tipu Sultan's sword. The sword was incredibly hard and had sharp edges which could easily rip through the opponent's armor. It was made from high carbon steel, which was known as the wood, that was manufactured all over South India. Earlier, it was kept in London Museum. Now it has been brought back to India. And if we will talk about the specialty of the wood steel, it was produced in many rural furnaces across India. It was very hard as special type of high carbon steel crystals was produced to make it. The term wood is derived from the Telugu word hukku, Kannada word ukku, and Tamil and Malayalam word urukku. All these words means steel only. Wood steel was famous all over the world until competition from British iron and steel imports which replaced Indian iron and steel. Wood steel needed special technique of refining iron. Iron was mixed with charcoal and put inside small clay pots. By controlling temperature, the steel ingots for sword making were produced by smelters. This kind of steel was found not only in India but in Central and West Asia also. But later, by imposing the taxes by the British country in the industrial revolution when it took place, so they want to open their own companies, so the wood steel industry was declined. But later, the Tata Iron Steel Company was the first modern iron and steel plant in India by 1911. It had a substantial production and soon became the largest single steel plant in the British Commonwealth. It was started by Jamshedji Tata. After the death of Jamshedji Tata, his son Dorabji Tata established a steel plant on the bank of the river Subarnarekha and named his industry town as Jamshedpur. The area was rich in iron ore and water both. The Tata Iron Steel Company, TISCO, started producing steel in 1912. Following the start of World War I in 1914, imports of British steel to India lessened as the British now had to meet wartime demand. During the course of the war, TISCO also had to produce and supply shells and carriage wheels for the war. By 1919, colonial government was buying 19% of the steel manufacturing by TISCO. J.R.D. Tata, the successor of Jamshedji Tata, founded India's first commercial airline in 1932. In 1946, its name was changed from Tata Airlines to Air India. The journey of TISCO was not so easy. It was very difficult. After seeing the popularity of iron and steel industry and many industries were also running, but India is still very far from the development as electricity and other kind of powers were not generated in our country. The basic power supply or we can say fuel was the forest wood, which was also known as the fuel wood, and of taking its benefit, the Britishers imposed a forest policy in our country. And after introducing the forest policy, many industries were now shut down because they were not having any other substitution of the forest wood for as a fuel. But later, when the coal mines were searched, so coal was also a substitute of the fuel wood, and again many industries started run especially after decline of the Tisco again. When they started run in our country, it was a kind of power supply which was done by the coal. So here we can include the industries which were famous during that time, that were the oldest industry in our country, but after the decline they again raised up and they shown their power. These were the cotton and textile industry and the iron and steel industries, which are still in the boom in our country. Students, here the revision, a short kind of revision, is complete of this chapter. Here I am providing you few important questions and few maps which will be helpful to you to understand more about this chapter.